All right. Hello, everybody. Having a little bit of technical difficulties, a little bit of lag so far. Hopefully you can see me okay. Everything is sounding good. So this week, we're going to talk about Luke 21. And in this story, we're going to talk about the poor widow's offering that she makes at the temple and what that makes to our life. And before we begin that, there's a question that I really want to ask you. And that's, what are you offering to God? Are you able to give everything that you can? Are you really pushing the limits of what you can give the way the poor widow did? Because if you're not, today's the day that we're going to talk about that, how to dive into that a little bit more, how to make sure that you're giving to God everything that you can. So, for those of you that are the first time here, make sure that you hit the subscribe button. Make sure that you'll be able to hit the bell icon afterwards, and that'll notify you when we're going with the next live stream. So I want to appreciate everybody that stopped by so far. So in this verse, we're looking at Luke 21. It's a story where Jesus sees a poor widow giving probably the last of her money, that she's putting 2 coins that she can barely live without to the temple, and that she's donating that to God. She's putting it all out on the line. And it's a story that we've probably heard a lot of times before, but I want to dive a little bit deeper into it. And not so much from, again, if you're not new to this channel, you already know this, but not dive into it from a theological standpoint, but more of, what does this mean for us? How does this apply to your faith? What does this mean in the real world, not just 2,000 years ago, but what does it actually mean for you right now, right here today? So, if you have any questions along the way, make sure that you put 3 question marks right at the beginning of your comment in the chat box. That way I know you've got a question. It'll stand out to me a little bit more, so I can make sure to answer that as fast as I can for you. And along the way, if you ever want to give me an amen for something, make sure you hit that like button or leave an amen in the comments. All right. So today's verse is Luke 21, 1 through 4. It's a shorter verse. In past weeks, we kind of dragged this out to 45, 50 minutes. This one, I thought maybe we'll try to go a little bit shorter again. I'll try to keep it to 15, 20, 25 minutes. I don't know. I like to ramble a little bit, so we'll see how this goes. But my promise is to try to keep it reasonable for you. I know a lot of people are listening to this while they're at work. So this week, we're going to look at a couple of specific things that within Luke 21, 1 through 4. First, we're going to talk a little bit about the setting of the story. Where are we at the moment? What are we actually, where do we find ourselves? We're going to talk a little bit about what the gift of the poor widow really means. What gifts can we offer beyond our money? And how can you give more, and why you should give more, right? And really, that's the meat and potatoes of this, is to really dive into it and talk about the how and the why, because obviously we understand the story. It's a classic story that you've heard, but this is one where if you really want to start diving into it a little bit more, I think you can gain that much more out of it by, again, I love to internalize scripture. It's not about memorizing any of this. It's not about knowing these stories by heart or even be able to recite to somebody, hey, remember Luke 21, the story about the poor widow? Just live it. Learn how to make it a part of your life so that you're given the last 2 coins of yours. All right. So let's dive into this, and we're going to talk about the setting a little bit. So where are we at? So Luke 20, the verse right before this, Jesus is in the temple. And obviously this is just before the big dance, right? This is just before the passion, him going to the cross. He's in Jerusalem. He's at the temple, and he's already there teaching and telling parables, trying to spread his message in Jerusalem, which is something that he didn't do a whole lot of prior to this because of, all the commotion that he knew that it would draw. That a lot of the things that he was doing were outside of Jerusalem. While he was there, he started being questioned by the chief priests and the scribes. Even later on, a little bit in the verse, the Sadducees show up, and they start giving him a hard time as well. They're trying to trap him this whole time. They're really focused on, what can they do to try to catch Jesus in this moment, that they're trying to find something wrong really in his teaching. Because what do they want to do? They're trying to get rid of him. They're trying to squash him. And he's facing all this persecution in this very moment. He's trying to teach and just share God's word. And then here are the chief priests and the scribes and everybody, the Pharisees, they're all trying to trap him so that they can get rid of him. And this is where, when you read the story, there's one thing that stood out to me a lot, that probably the first few times that I heard the story, I didn't really catch on it. It was actually my spiritual director in my own spiritual direction session earlier this week that pointed this out to me. And so for anyone that thinks that I don't practice what I preach, as far as saying you should go find a good spiritual director, well, this is proof right there that I do it myself. But he pointed out something to me, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later. And so let's dive into that. But so as Jesus was sitting there, Jesus looks up, and out of the corner of his eye, he sees something. So let's dive into the verse. Jesus looked up and saw rich people putting their gifts into the treasury. He also saw a poor widow put in 2 small copper coins. He said, "Truly I tell you, this poor widow has put in more than all of them, for all of them have contributed out of their abundance. But she, out of her poverty, has put in all she had to live on." And the obvious answer to that is, we see the significance of those 2 coins and how important it is for her, right? But what do you think? Well, what are some of your first thoughts as far as why was this important? What stood out about this poor widow's offering, that she's giving these 2 coins? Why are those 2 coins worth more than, let's say, one of the rich people gave 1,000 coins or even 50 coins? Why do her 2 coins matter that much more? Or why was it that much more difficult? Or why was it something that Jesus pointed out? Why did he take this moment to point it out? What stood out to him? And for those of you that are new, so right here, that Chad Torreson that looks like me, that's my little girl in there in the other room. She said, "I think I heard this story." So yes, Ellie, you've probably heard this story before. And listen up, sweetie, and I'll teach you a little bit about it, all right? And from Heather, she talks about the widow's faith in giving out of her poverty shows that she trusts the Lord to meet all her needs. And this is something that I want to dive into deeper. That to me is a lot along the lines of what I think that this is going on. That trust is really the core of this. And we're going to talk about that more. But she's reaching out, and even though she's got very little left, we don't know the exacts. We don't know if this is the last 2 coins or not, but she's giving some of what little she has. That in that same situation, if you found yourself in the same situation, I've been there. I've been where I'm down to literally my last two bills kind of thing, right? I've got no money left. And I held on to that money for every, the tightest that I could, making sure that I had that for an emergency or something that might come up. Maybe I needed it for gas or for food or for the necessities of life. It was hard to give up that last $20, $40 that I had to my name, because what was I going to do without it? How was I going to survive if I didn't have that little bit of money to my name? It wasn't much, but it was everything that I was going to need to survive through that next week and the week after. Yet this woman gave away the rest of what she had. And it's just a testament to her faith and to the amount of trust that she had in God. All right. So what is the real gift of the poor widow? And this is exactly where you're going to see that I agreed exactly with what Heather had to say. Trust. Isn't that what faith is all about? That trust is really at the core of all of this. That's what faith is, really. That you believe that I exist. You're watching me right now, unless you think this is all, put together by machines and computer animated and everything else, you believe that I'm a real person. But many of you don't know me yet. A few of you do, but most of you don't really know me, don't know who I am, don't know much about my life. So you may believe that I exist, but do you have faith in me? Do you trust in me? If I were to ask you even for $100, would you loan it to me? I mean, that's a small ask because it's just $100, right? That if you lost that, it wouldn't, really be the end of your life. But this woman had so much trust in God that she was willing to give it all, that she was willing to put it all on the line. So she not only believed in God, but she trusted him, which means that she had faith. And that's what it is. It's the evidence of our faith that when we're willing to do these things, when we're willing to put ourselves out there on the line and to have that trust in God, that when we put the last bit of everything we have into his hands and trust him that he's going to hopefully make it multiply for us, or in her case, just to provide, that she's not giving God her last 2 coins, hoping that he's going to make her rich. There's so many times that I hear that in modern society from modern preachers where they'll tell people, give me your last, give me your coins, write me a check. Some televangelist will say, hey, I've got this new mission. Make sure you send me $1,000. Even if you've only got $800, send me $1,000, put the rest on your credit card. That's an awful idea, right? That guy's not doing it for the right reasons. But if you give it to God, whatever it is, it's not that, these guys, these televangelists will a lot of times say, give me $1,000 and God's going to make you rich. God's going to take care of all your worries and all your problems. You'll never have to worry again. I don't think that's true. I think that trusting in God and giving him your last bit is great. I think that's an important thing to do. But the kind of wealth that he gives you won't be that kind of wealth. It'll give you that wealth of strength and of hope and of joy that's in your heart. The ability to endure that poverty, the ability to endure whatever trials come your way in life, that you won't have to worry about anything that comes against you because you've got God by your side. You've got that faith that can help you get through anything, that faith that can move mountains. And that's the difference. It's not about giving God our worldly wealth to get more worldly wealth back. You give God your worldly wealth so that you get that heavenly wealth back, that you get the things that really matter, that will really make a difference in your life. So I want to highlight some of the comments here. So make sure everyone keeps adding into the comments, into the chat box. There's a lot going on there. So I appreciate everybody that stopped by. And so what are some other gifts that you can offer up to God, right? In the chat box, make sure you give me the answers here. I've got a couple ideas that I'm going to talk about specifically, but really, there's a few things that we could probably come up with as far as what are other gifts that you can give to God. Again, like I said, I've got some specific ones that I want to talk about, but money isn't the only thing that we can put in the offering plate, as it were. It's our first thought that when we talk about tithing or giving something to God, we think financial. We're a very financially driven society, way too much, in my opinion, that we're spending so much time worried about our finances and our wealth that, we're really making the right priorities in our life. I spend a lot of time in talking with spiritual direction, and a lot of them get it, and they're focused on the things of the earth. But there's also people that I talk to all the time that, they're asking for God's will. Whenever they ask for God's will, it's always, will God give me more abundance? Will God help me get out of this financial poverty? Will God give me $1 million? Will God, fix my house or give me a nicer place to live? And while those things are important, we don't see that from the widow. We don't see her going there and giving 2 coins and expecting God to repay her. She's giving to God because she knows that God has already provided everything she needs. And if we start there and realize that the rest is just abundance and it's just blessings, that whatever we do have, this life itself is an abundant blessing, that we start to change our mind and realize that those last 2 coins that she gave, in a sense, don't matter. That she was able to give of those because she wasn't holding so tightly onto them. It's hard to give those last 2 coins if they have too much of a strong place in your heart, if they mean too much to you, if they've taken a stronger hold in your life than what they're really worth. They're still just 2 coins. And even 1,000 coins or $1,000 or $1 million, it's just paper. It's just money. It won't hold the same intrinsic value to you, especially when you get to heaven. It's not like you're bringing any of this stuff with you anyways. So what are a couple of things that you've thought of? Let's see what in the comments, if so friend here, excuse me, I'm if you could in the chat box, give me your name. I know we've talked before, you've stopped by in the past, but they've left this quote. I came across a quote on a video which taught me time is more expensive than money. And time is a great example. And time is actually one of the ones that I'm going to talk about, that especially in our busy society, how much time do we really have? We're always so busy that it's hard to really find time for God. And that's why for me, I was going to talk about the 3 T's: time, talent, and treasure. That it begins with obviously we're talking about the treasure. We're talking about our financial means. But even when it comes to treasure, there are other treasures that we can offer. But time, I think, is one of the first ones. That regardless of how much money you may have, you can always offer God your time. You can always volunteer to serve others and to take care of other people. You can always spend more time at church, more time in prayer. You can always find ways to give God more time than you are right now. And the true fact of the matter is that most of us are only given a little bit of time. How much time do you spend in prayer every day? How much time do you spend reading scripture? How much time are you spending volunteering and doing good things for others? If most of your day is spent focused on your work, your career, even your family life, right? It depends on how we put that focus. If your family is only focused on having fun and doing exciting things, well, but if you're focused with your family as seen it as a part of your vocation, right? Then that could be something where you're giving God that time. I see it that way, that when I'm taking care of my kids, that's part of my vocation. And so I'm doing what God would call me to do. So there are ways to give God time. It's just really about having the right mindset. It's where your focus is at with those things. So the next one would obviously be your talents. God's given you these great talents and you're probably using them for your career or maybe for one of your hobbies. I like to play guitar. I don't know if I'd call it a talent quite yet, but I like to play the guitar. Am I only using that talent for my sake? Or is it something that I can use to grow closer to God? Now, I'm nowhere near stepping on top of a stage to play in front of a crowd yet, but I've only been playing for a couple of years and not that consistently. But I hope that one day I can take that talent that I've developed and use it for God and use it as a way to lead others in worship and bring them closer to God. Or the same thing, I've got this talent with technology. So why not start a YouTube channel? I don't 100% know what I'm doing yet, but we'll figure it out, right? And that's giving God a little bit of that talent, is giving back something that he's given me. The talent with technology has allowed me to have a good career and a good job as an IT guy, but what can I do with that to broaden the church? What can I do to evangelize a little bit more, to share my faith and help others grow in their faith? And that's why we're here, that I realized that I could use this talent and give it to God. So what's a talent that you can offer? If you could, leave it in the comment or the chat box. What's one of the talents that you have that you think would be great to be able to share with God? And it could be anything. A lot of times we only think about people that have talents for the church as the people that are standing in front of the pulpit, the people that are evangelizing and on stage in front of somebody, giving a speech or writing a book. We always think of some form of media, it seems like. But I can tell you, for instance, my wife has a great talent for being organized and for being a planner, for creating events that are fun and planning parties, right? She's also got this great care for those in need, especially the homeless and those that are poor. So she can use those talents and those, draws for God, right? She can take those things and instead of just using that to build her career out, she can use that to help the church. And she could either do it as a volunteer and she could support the various ministries out there. And even if it's not some church related, one of the things that my wife was doing was helping out a local charity that helps with the kids' schools. But now she's actually taken another step where she got a full-time job at the church that we go to. So now she's taking that talent and she's using it full-time for God. But whether or not you use that talent full-time or not, whether you're getting paid for it as your job or not, you can still use your talents for God. It doesn't have to be, not everybody's called to a full-time vocation. One day I'd love to be able to do this stuff full-time and spend all my time creating YouTube videos and writing books. I don't know if that's the case. I might be an IT guy for the rest of my life. But for right now, I'm having fun creating these videos, so let's keep at it. And so Heather mentioned one where she said, I think I'm good at encouraging others, which is a great one, that you can just reach out to other people and lift them up. It's not something that you even have to really devote a lot of time to. There's a lot of our talents like this that you can use to help others right there in that moment. The people that you come across in your life, whether it's your family members, your friends, your coworkers, the people at your church. So, and then of course I mentioned Mary, my wife, and she said, I'm good at talking and helping others. That's why I love working for the church. That one of the things that she gets to do on a daily basis is deal with all the phone calls that come in. People come in because they're looking for help. They need help from one of the priests, or they need to request a mass, or they're trying to sign up for something. Right now, obviously, we're still dealing with COVID and they're doing church on a limited basis. And so people call in to reserve their times. They have some online forms, but the elderly people have a hard time doing it. So they call her and she sets it up for them. And every day she's coming home and having these great conversations with people she's never met before. They're telling her about their lives. She's telling them about ours. And here, instead of just doing what she's called to do, which is, oh, okay, I'm going to take their information down and set them up, she's engaging with them, especially some of the elderly people that she's dealing with that are probably alone most of the day and don't have a lot of people to talk to. She uses that talent and that skill above and beyond. Instead of just doing what you're called to do, going above and beyond to really care for those people. So, and that kind of brings me to my next point, which is how can you give more? How can you go to that next step and go beyond just that minimum of what you're asked to? And how can you go to the next step? Like, for instance, I've heard some people say that you're supposed to give 3% to your church. I've heard others say 10%. Are you giving either one of those? Or are you going above? Are you meeting some minimum amount? Or are you really stretching it a little bit? And when it comes to your time, there's times that my wife and others will tell me, I'm way too busy. I've got way too many things on my plate. I'm running a business. I'm finishing up my master's degree in Christian spirituality, trying to be a spiritual director, starting this YouTube ministry. Plus, now my wife's gone back to work, so the kids are at home with me full time. And my days get a little crazy. But I'm willing to put that extra effort in for God. Because most of those things besides my daily duties of my job and, taking care of the kids are part of this ministry, are part of trying to share the faith with others. It's hard. It's not easy. It's not a lot of fun, but take it to that next level. So are there ways that you think that you can give a little bit more? Can you just 10% more? You don't have to give double the effort. If you're spending, when it comes to giving God your time, if you're giving him 10 minutes a day, can you make it 20? Right? And maybe over time that 20 becomes 30 and that 30 becomes 40. And I'm not saying that you've got to even do 40 minutes an hour all in prayer. Maybe you're giving them 10, 20 minutes of prayer, 10, 20 minutes of scripture reading, 10, 20 minutes with another book, and even maybe just 10 or 20 minutes of listening to Christian music on the radio. What are ways that you can give God more of yourself? What are ways that you can be more present in the moment? And to me, that's really one of the best ways to do it, is that we don't necessarily have to set aside time for God all the time. We think that the only way to connect with God in prayer or otherwise is to lock ourselves in a room and find complete peace and quiet and talk to God. And I love doing it. I've been doing it every night ever since I started the spiritual exercises. But there's also times throughout the day I need to connect with God. And I don't need to wait till the end of the night when I finally have a chance to pray to do that. I can have a moment with God right here, right now. We can spend time together, even just you watching this video right now. Spending time learning about Luke 21 is a way for you to say that you spent time with God, growing and learning in his word. So the next question would be, why should you give more? And this was the part that really stood out to me. It was something that my spiritual director pointed out to me. I was covering this verse. We were talking about this verse earlier this week. And he kind of just said it in passing a little bit, where he just mentioned, did you think about this? And it really, really impacted me. And this is why I wanted to share this with you. And remember from Jesus what Jesus did in Luke 21:1. It said, he looked up and saw. That's it. That's simple. And why is that important? Because Jesus noticed. Remember where Jesus was at. We talked about earlier on in this verse that in the chapter before, that Jesus was in the temple and he was surrounded by the Pharisees and the scribes and the Sadducees. They're testing him. They're putting him under trial. They're trying to get him to make a mistake so that they can put him on trial and get rid of him. And Jesus knows what's coming very shortly. He knows that his time has come and that it's going to be over soon. Yet in the midst of all that pressure, and let's not forget that Jesus, while he's fully God, was also fully man. In the midst of all that pressure, he looked up and he saw that woman. He noticed her. He picked up that she was giving those last 2 coins. Imagine the chaos and the commotion going on inside that temple. Imagine everything that's happening, that with the people around him, they're questioning him, they're grilling him for all these answers. And Jesus stops and looks to the side and sees the woman putting in those 2 coins. What drew him to that? And the reason why I bring that up is because if he could notice in the midst of all of that, that woman giving her 2 last coins, imagine how much he notices you. That when you're giving your time and your energy and your talents and your treasures, God's going to notice, right? As, when this is my daughter's, she says, I make people laugh, right? So God notices when little Ellie makes people laugh. When she tells a joke, and she loves to do it in her class, and she likes to, one of her dad's favorite candies is Laffy Taffy. And on each Laffy Taffy, there's a little joke. And so sometimes she'll take those little jokes or little jokes that she reads somewhere else. And she's in 2nd grade, by the way. And she'll take this in front of her class in Zoom, and she'll read the jokes to them. And she enjoys making people laugh. That's a talent that she has, something that she can use to brighten somebody's day a little bit. And God notices that effort. God notices those little things that she's doing for the rest of her classmates. When the rest of the class is frustrated or down because of the fact that coronavirus has us all locked up, a lot of kids were struggling with dealing with the pandemic because of the big change that instead of being in their classrooms with all their friends, they were all stuck at home taking class on Zoom. You know, as much as we complain as adults about the way coronavirus has impacted us, imagine those little kids and how things have impacted them trying to go to school. I've got a kindergartner and a second grader and the trials that they've been through. How little they understand about what's really going on in the world. But here's my little trooper of a little girl reading jokes to her class to try to brighten their day because she's got the positive outlook in life to be able to say, there's better, there's more to this, there's hope. There's reasons to smile and to laugh and to have fun. Even in the midst of all this chaos and sadness, there's ways that we can still lift each other up. She can use that talent. She doesn't have 2 coins to give. Just like that poor widow. The poor widow gave the last of her 2 coins. My daughter's got very little money. She's got a little money that she gets from her birthdays. For her and my son, Johnny, whenever they have a little bit of extra money, they love giving mommy and daddy some of their money. There's been times where they've come to me with a few coins from their pocket to say, hey, Dad, here's to help pay for the pizza tonight. Or here, Dad, here's to help pay for the bills this week. They didn't have to do that, but out of the kindness of their heart. And Jesus saw that. And when you're doing the same thing, when you're giving God your time and talent, he's going to notice that. Just like my kids melted my heart when they offered me their last 2 coins. You're melting God's heart by doing the same. That he knows what those last 2 coins mean for you. Or if you're at the end of your day and you don't have any time left and you're exhausted and all you want to do is sleep, but then you stop and you give 10 or 15 minutes to God, those 10 or 15 minutes are going to mean more to God than if you had given him an hour during the rest of the day. Because you gave him the last of what you had. You made sure that despite your lack of energy or despite having any more to go on, that you gave him that last little bit. You made sure to find time for him. You didn't give up. You didn't cut him out. You gave him whatever you could, despite everything else going on in your life. When you do that, God will notice. And he will repay you. Not in necessarily in worldly means. I mean, maybe it could happen, right? Maybe you buy a lotto ticket the next day. But the reality is, when you do that, you're going to get a wealth of peace and joy that you wouldn't have had before. That if you make that a habit, giving God that little bit of time, using your talents to support him and to support the kingdom, you will be rewarded for it. And if not here in this world, definitely in the next. So I want to thank everybody that stopped by. This was a lot of fun to, share some of this with you. Glad that my girl stopped by as always. Some of my other friends that are here every week. If this is your first time, make sure that you subscribe to get notified of our Bible study live streams. We go live every Friday at 3 Eastern, 2 Central, so you can catch that live each week. And I really do appreciate everyone's support and love throughout all this. I love all the comments and stuff. I love my daughter pointing out that I love Jell-O. And hopefully in the coming weeks, this will continue to get better. I'll get some of the technology down. Thanks again for stopping by, and I'll see you in the next one. See you soon. Thanks. God bless. Bye-bye.